Welcome to the second video in this Python with AI series, where we'll go over how to debug our projects making use of AI. So a misconception about the coding process is that it's just writing code, like how we've been doing in these past few episodes and in the Python Basics series, but this actually is not the case. There are also times when we'd have buggy code which doesn't function properly. And fixing that buggy code is also part of the coding process. And this process of fixing buggy code is called debugging. And pretty much every single programmer has to engage with this process, even professional coders, because because we all make mistakes. None of us are perfect. And so that means there's almost always some part of our project which could be improved or might not work properly. So before AI really became popular, the most common way to debug a piece of code was by looking at the error message and then just Googling how to fix it, or using websites like Stack Overflow. However, now that we have AI in the form of tools like Windsurf, we can now fix errors like these in a much easier way simply by just using our IDE, which is VS Code. So in VS Code, when an error appears, a wavy line will be shown showing the location of the error. And when you hover over it, it'll show an error message and a button to explain the error in more detail using the Windsurf chat. Let's look at an example of buggy code right now to show off this feature. So you can see when I hover over this wavy red line here, then you can see it says opening parentheses was not closed. And so what that means is there's just a parentheses that is opening here and no closing parentheses to actually create a pair. There is one here, but it's inside quotes, so it's basically ignored. So we have to move it to the outside in order to fix the error. However, there are cases when we don't really know how to fix the error and we need an explanation. So we can hover over this again, and you can see there's a link here to explain the problem to us. So if we click on it, then you can see Windsurf outlines the error in more detail, saying it's an unclosed left parentheses. And then you can add an additional closing parentheses at the end. And it'll also provide a solution for us so that we can just copy it and paste it into our code right away. So that previous error with the unclosed parentheses that we went over was actually a syntax error. So syntax errors are really obvious to spot because of those red lines that show up, but runtime errors don't have those red lines. However, they're still problematic and can cause errors when running the code. So even though the syntax might look okay, it's at runtime when you actually notice the error. So in order to fix these errors, you can give the error message to Windsurf chat and ask it for an explanation and a fix for the error. So to showcase a runtime error, let's look at this piece of code here. So we can see it's defining a variable age, setting it to 24, and it's printing out age formatted with age colon and then a space before it so that the user clearly knows that this number is the person's age. So this looks okay because it's just concatenating 24 with this age string here. However, if we run the code, you can see it produces an error saying type error, can only concatenate strings to strings, not integers. So in order to fix this error and get an explanation as to why this error is occurring, we can put this error in this chat window, and then we can ask the AI, what does this error mean and how can I fix it? And then we can send a message. And then it says we're trying to concatenate a string with an integer, which is not allowed. And so it's saying we can use the string function str as a function, which converts the variable, the integer variable, into a string. So it gives an example here saying the number is, and then str, and then in parentheses, a number x, which is very similar to our use case. So we can just surround age with str in parentheses. And now if we run it, you can see it works. So Windsurf not only provides a solution to us, but it also explains why the error occurred in the first place, which is really valuable for learning more about Python and how our code might actually be error prone even though it might not look like it at first. Next, we'll be looking at logic errors. So code with logic errors, unlike syntax or runtime errors, can run properly without crashing at all, without any error message, but the output or result will be incorrect. And because there's no visible error message, these are much harder to spot than runtime or syntax errors unless you're looking very closely at each step inside of your code. So as an example of a logic error, let's look at this function which is supposed to find the factorial of a number, or in other words, a number times all of the natural numbers that come before it. So if we try to find the factorial of 10, and you can see this function produces the incorrect output. And the correct output is a number that's way bigger than the 56 that's printed out here. However, there's no error message, so the only reason we know that this code doesn't function properly is because it produces the wrong output. So in order to fix it, firstly, we can focus on a specific part of the code by using the @ symbol inside of the chat. And then we can type in the name of the function or block of code that's facing the problem. So we can type in factorial here to address the factorial function here. And then we can say there is clearly a logic error inside of this function because it produces the wrong output. Could you find it, explain it, and provide a solution? And then we send it. And then it says the error is that we're adding each number from 1 to n to the product variable, but we have to multiply each number instead. So this is a very small change. It's just changing this plus sign to a multiplication sign or an asterisk. And now if we run the code, you can see it produces the correct output, same as in a calculator. And also, because we gave context using the at symbol here, we just focused on the factorial function. We didn't focus on anything else, which is useful if you know exactly where the logic error is, but you can't figure out what exactly it is. However, if the logic error was somewhere inside of the whole file and you didn't know where it was at all, you can use the at symbol and focus on the whole Python file by typing in main.py and then asking the AI for the logic error. So the challenge for this episode is to copy this code. It'll also be there in the description so that you can easily copy and paste it into VS Code. And this code has 3 errors. So for this exercise, you want to use Windsurf chat to find all 3 errors, explain all the 3 errors, and fix all of them too. And after you're done, you should have this output of all the names printed in the names list on individual lines inside of the terminal. By using the AI to find these errors, you're learning in the process because every time you read an explanation of an error, you're more likely to recognize it in the future. So that way, it'll be easier to debug projects like this and even bigger ones in the future. Thank you very much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and make sure to look out for the next episode coming soon.